Welcome to another episode of Behind the Shield podcast. I'm your host, Gary Daemer, and today I have a new host, Ryan Adcock. In the very beginning of this, I'd like for Ryan just to briefly introduce who you are, what you're about, what your role here is at Infusion Points, and just, you know, uh, also give us a background of who you are as well. You've got to be the only employee that we have that has an IMDb here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yes.
leave it at that, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me here. My name is Ryan Adcock. I'm on the cloud team here at Infusion Points. So, working inside of environments, managing their vulnerabilities, submitting POAMs, and dealing directly with customers as we prepare them for authorization and after authorization. My journey to IT is very unique, as Gary said. After college, I got into real estate. I was a very successful real estate agent for 10 years, but ultimately decided I wanted to do something new. Um, I've always been interested in computers, growing up as a millennial, growing up in the computer age, right? Seeing it evolve in front of our eyes. I started taking some cloud classes and really got interested in the cloud infrastructure aspect of things. After doing some learning and passing a few certifications, found Infusion Points, applied for a position here, met with Gary and the team, and Gary took a chance on me and introduced me into IT, and it's been fantastic. I started on the
I'm really
advisory team.
happy that you decided to make that transfer because you've been
Yes,
you've been a pleasure to
thank you.
work with. I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you. It's been great, and it's been such a learning opportunity for me. And that's what I really love about Infusion Points is they encourage learning, and that's really helped me grow into my position. And that's what I love. I love to learn, and that's what working at Infusion Points is really all about. It's one of the key definers for being an employee here.
You're also remote based too, right? You're
I am.
out of Norfolk, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia, so about 5.5 hours away from our home base. But it's been great to drive out there and meet everyone out there as well. And going back to how I got into it, I also after while I was doing real estate, I also did acting. So
oh,
as Gary
right,
mentioned, so
IMDb.
yes, so did quite a bit of that. It was a lot of fun. Had an opportunity to be on a few shows, which was fun. And again, it was just also learning how to be a little more confident in yourself, which has
Right,
helped me in my career as well.
and that clearly showed when you went through the interview process. Not only did you know about cloud stuff, which is important to know, and working in a cloud company, but you also had that ability to speak to customers,
That's right.
and that's why we I think more than anything like to have you on board here. So,
Yeah,
and today we're going to have actually one of your customers as a guest. So maybe you can do just
absolutely.
an introduction of SK as we bring him on.
Yeah, today joining us is SK from Riverbed Technology. We've been working together for almost 11, 12 months now as we prepare for authorization for Riverbed. So, SK, welcome. If you wouldn't
Hey,
mind, give us a little background on yourself and about Riverbed.
hey, thanks for inviting me to this wonderful show. Um, let's see about me in Riverbed. Uh, been I have been in IT field pretty much since getting out of college, so I don't have an interesting story like you, Ryan. Um, but over the last decade or so, I've zoomed in on cybersecurity, partly by necessity, of the past, and partly by choice. Um, I joined Riverbed to take the company through its own FedRAMP journey because I had some experience at my prior company going through FedRAMP, and it was a really exciting opportunity. In the middle of the pandemic, starting remote, nobody's going into the office, and uh, starting a new job and starting a new security program, really. So it's been a very exciting journey, and we've been working on a project with you guys over the past, as you said, 11, 12 months. You guys have been fantastic, right?
Thank you,
And
thank you.
we've enjoyed working with Gary, you, and Ryan, and all the countless uh, members of the team that have been helping us.
For me, talk to us a little bit about how you got into FedRAMP. Because I don't think people choose to go into FedRAMP. I think they're kind of thrusted into it, and then once they're in it, they're like, "Wow, there's a lot going on here," And then once you get that knowledge, it's hard to walk away from it because you got so much time and effort invested into it, and so much knowledge, invested into it. Maybe you could just talk a brief moment about how and why FedRAMP as well for yourself.
Yeah, happy to. Um, I don't think there is a single company out there that decides, oh, I want to go after this compliance framework just because, right? In almost
Right.
all, if not every single case, it's their customers saying, no, you got to do this or else we can't do business with you. That's especially true when it comes to federal government, right? FedRAMP, as we all know, has become a law, a requirement over the last few years. But even before that, more and more agencies, more and more missions were asking for FedRAMP authorization. And so that's how my company got pulled into doing a FedRAMP authorization. And as the newly appointed leader of security and compliance, I was named to uh, shape that uh, path to authorization. Of course, I didn't do it myself, right? There was a lot of help from across the company and, a lot of hard work. What
Cool.
I've learned to appreciate about FedRAMP is, unlike, say, ISO 27001 or some of the other programs that are more descriptive, FedRAMP is very prescriptive. And that's daunting when you begin the journey. Oh, I have to do all these things, even if you just start with FedRAMP moderate, right? 325 controls and not just implement the controls, but keep up with the rinse and repeat, right? The hygiene of it all. But once you sort of get through that initial hurdle, you realize that you're that much better off. Your customers are that much better off. Your security program has evolved. And as one of my mentors used to say, the rising tide lifts all boats. Right? And that's exactly what FedRAMP does, is that it forces companies to improve their security posture. And that benefits not just the federal government, but also each and every one of these companies that serving the federal government.
So, from a FedRAMP process perspective, talk to me about like say the old process, like the process that you went in through initially, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the differences that you see in say the DoD process that you're going through right now.
Yeah. So when we first went through FedRAMP, we were, I think, 110th or 111th CSP to be authorized. I think the number is well north of 400 at this point, if not close to 500. Um, the process was well defined. It was just a lot more manual. Let's just put it that way, right? The program management office took vested interest in reviewing the package, providing feedback, and that meant that there was a bit of back and forth between the CSP, the 3PAL, as well as the PMO. As I understand, with some of the recent changes, with especially like FedRAMP 20X, there's a lot more push towards automation, and that's certainly a welcome change, right? Everything, not everything needs to be done manually if automation can help make things more efficient. Um, we have not firsthand, I've first not seen that automation firsthand, so I can't speak so much about, how much benefit or drawbacks it might have. But as you know, we're going through a Department of Defense process today, and uh, again, the manual touch, the detailed review, the scrutiny is present. And I can appreciate that, right? The Department of Defense has a lot of sensitive information that they need to protect, and having the checks and balances is a sure shot way of achieving that.
having multiple reviews, and then having review boards and things like that.
That's
Even though
right.
it adds complexity and adds different views. Um, Hopefully, what that ultimately does is get you more secure as you go through each kind of layer, because you have to go through a 3PAO audit. Um, and That's pretty rigorous, right? And not only do you have to go through the 3PO audit, you have to go through the readiness assessment first, and then they need to make sure that you're ready to be audited, right? That's what they want to make sure. So they're not wasting the DoD is not wasting their time to put you in the queue to make sure that you are ready for the audit. And once the audit is complete, you know the which can take anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks, give or take a day, for the audit. And then once that package is developed and submitted, the you have to go through an initial review within the JVT perspective, joint validation team, and then they then take that information and can make recommendations up, but they're not the ones who actually do the approval. You have to then go through multiple layers beyond that. You know, from a process side, it is definitely a few more layers, and then a lot more coordination, because not only are you coordinating with DISA, you're also coordinating with your customer, your end customer, at the end of the day. So you also have to get them to review it and be on board with what your documentation is saying, what the 3PO assessment is saying, and then making sure that they align with what they want to have, your end customer wants to have as well. So they have to, give their stamp of approval on it as well. And then once you make it through all that, they have to do it all over again to give you the actual authorization. So this just gives you the provisional ATO, and I think that gets people at least started, and then being able to bring some potential customers into your environment, because by then you're connected, to the DoD network. All your traffic's going through the network, the DoD network, and then it allows you to complete your configurations. So, but
Yeah.
you know
And I think the one thing I'll add to that is one, the rules of the game change from time to time.
yes,
Guidances come out, whether it's from the PMO or DISA or elsewhere. It might be an executive order that comes down all the way from the president, and all that may change the goalpost for a
yes,
company that might be mid-flight in their authorization, right?
yeah.
So,
So you speaking?
and
Are you speaking from
this is not
experience?
limited to, well, yeah, I mean, the FedRAMP authorization we went through before, as well as the DSA experience we're having today, right? The one thing I've learned is to be nimble, right? Things are going to
Yes,
change. You cannot say this is the only path, right? It's
right.
I always equate it to saying, oh, I've decided to go from New York to LA and we're going to take a road trip. Decide where you're going to have pit stops and get gas or dinner and stay overnight. But then also have contingencies. If the road is closed, you might have to go around or a completely different path. That's okay. Your
Right.
destination doesn't change if just because the road is closed.
I tell
And I
you,
think that's what we need to keep in
yeah.
mind.
No, it is. It is that something that we always try to do with our customers is to say, look, this we can do as much as estimates on things that we can control, right? And everything within your control, you want to make sure you do the best job that you can do. So when you're delivering it, they're not having second guesses about what you're delivering, right? And that enables them, when they get the stuff, the package, right? It enables them to then make decisions and move faster. But you have zero control over government shutdowns or people's vacations, or the timelines that are then experienced with this, or if a new requirement does come in. And in this regard, we do have a new requirement that came in during this process, and you're not the only customer that this is impacting as well. We have like two or three others that we're going through the same exact thing with this whole new set of requirements that came in, that we're trying to get in and figure out the best way to enable these requirements. Because if you don't meet those requirements, then you don't get the certification that you ultimately want to get.
Exactly.
um, so we hoped initially that they would grandfather folks in who actually had already started the process, but we're finding out that they're not. They're going to be pretty strict about it and drive you to where they need you to meet all the requirements. Which, if it's a requirement, we got to
Yeah,
figure out how to meet it. You know,
yeah,
but
yeah. Again, being nimble and just being, expecting these kind of hurdles is the only way to maintain sanity through authorization process.
well, you know, you've done this for a couple companies, right? We've done this for 20 or 30 companies, and trying to balance this all throughout the year is always difficult because every time we go through one of these, because I think we're in an audit every single month with our customers, because not only do we help you guys build and accelerate your build process, but we also manage these environments for our customers as well. So part of that management process is managing the ATOs for our customers, and we have a service we call Audit Shield, which helps. And I think you hopefully you've seen how well that works within your environment with the audit. But every customer that we work with, we go through that not only in the initial audit, but it's also the annual audits. Um, and working with them. But every one we go through, we then have to figure out what new requirements are going to be put in place. I'll give you a really good example. I won't list which one it was and when it was, but there was a requirement that hit us. There was an executive order, and it came out like 4 days before our audit started. And the auditors are like, "Well, do you meet this?" And we're like, "Meet what?" Because it had literally just come out,
Ink
and we
hadn't
had
even
not.
dried yet.
Oh my God, the ink wasn't even dry yet, but they were asking us about it, and we quickly had to, figure out how our solution met that requirement because it did. It actually did meet the requirement, but we just had to, figure out how to get it documented properly, and how to be able to tell the story, on that. And I mean it. Almost everyone we go through, there's always something. We learn something new every time. So
And that's the benefit for us being in audits so often, right?
right,
Is one, we see how different 3PAOs view things, right? That there is
right.
some interpretation there. So it allows us to be able to have a better understanding of the requirements, how a 3PAO may view those. So it just sharpens our team even more when we do see these new requirements come down the pipe.
And the other thing I'll say is, having worked with you, Ryan, right? You're great at navigating, helping us navigate through these surprise requirements, right? Sometimes uh, one might be able to say, look, we understand it's a requirement, but not having it implemented presents a risk. Why don't we just take on the hit,
Mm-hmm.
add it to a plan of, take the risk as part of your findings, Miss or Mr. 3PL, and then we'll add it to a plan of actions and milestones and track it to completion. Buy time that way, as opposed to it becoming a roadblock. I'm not saying that every single requirement can be mitigated like that, but some of them, which may not be like that stringent or that risky, uh, can be treated like that. And I appreciate you guys, helping us navigate through some of those hurdles.
Well, that's part of what we do here. Again, knowing all the different questions that we get with different auditors, and then understanding the requirements as they're laid out, it does get to be quite difficult. To try to address all the new stuff as you're also trying to implement all the old stuff. You know, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, these three things changed, and we're going to have to figure out how to get them integrated in, or we're going to have to figure out how we do some risk adjustments to accept some of that risk as well. And to be honest with you, SK, you've done that very well yourself. You've been able to, kind of talk your team, because yeah, we build a good infrastructure, but you are really focused on helping your team, your developers, and your support people to be able to support this as well. So you're constantly, talking to them about what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, and really translating the FedRAMP language to the language of your company, which has really been helpful as well, which is a crucial part of being successful here. So
So what you're saying is that every company needs a champion that is sort of bridging the business and the security worlds.
yes, absolutely. There's no doubt. We struggle when there's not somebody like you on the other side, right? Um, it really is very difficult if we're trying to explain it to somebody who has no security experience for one, no government experience number two, and then not understand the rigor that's really required. And I've been through an ISO audit, I've been through a SOC 2 audit. Why is it any harder than that? Well, you know as well as I do that it's not just even the technical controls or the manual controls, is those operational controls, that rigor, that month over month over month that you got to continue to hammer in with vulnerabilities and different various checks that you got to do. you know so I know you just met our new VP of customer success, Jeff Bivens. Yeah, I've often, and you've probably heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. It's something that he said that I've borrowed to try to talk to many of our customers about. FedRAMP, as an example, is not something you do; it is something that you become. And I know you've probably heard me say that before. Now you actually know who actually said it, and you got to meet the guy. And I think it was our second or third ATO we were working on with him.
Okay.
That he said, Gary, this is you've got to become this. You do. You've got to be able to feel it out and really be able to explain it to the staff, because a lot of people know why. Why is this so hard? Why do I got to do this? Why do I got to do that? Why do I have to do this? You know, and you've been able to do a really good job with your team. From the very beginning of from the day we started with the gap assessments, even all the way through till we had the on-site, at your facility here in North Carolina. So,
Yeah.
but
It's uh, uh, I often come up with uh, very risque analogies, and so I think one
I know
of
you
them
do.
here
I always look
is
forward to them, though.
They're great every time.
uh, that, all these compliances are like religion. Look, doesn't matter which religion you pick, right? Whether
Hmm.
you're Catholic and you got to go to confessional, you got to go to confessional, right? You got to go to church every Sunday, you got to go to church, or you're like you go to temple, you go to mosque, doesn't matter, right? Once you adopt a religion, you've got to go through with a certain level of rituals,
Yes.
and you got to keep up with it. And I think that's what it is with these compliance regimes as well.
You can't
Yeah.
pick and choose which ones you want to follow.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
exactly.
So, what do you think? You've been in the industry for a long time. Where do you think this federal compliance, space is headed? I mean, if you could just imagine just for a moment, where do you see, where do you think it's going to go? And you can divide it up, because I think we're starting to see a little bit of a division between the way DoD is doing it and the way the civil sector is doing it. But so however you want to, kind of maybe pull it together, maybe you have a pure view of, say, hey, they're going to come back together and they're going to get married again. So
No, I think I don't know whether they will or not, but I do see the value in the two sides of the government trusting each other's work to some extent, right? And trusting each other's programs to some extent, uh, um, because that benefits them. They don't have to do double reviews of the same thing, for example,
mhm.
right? Just because, oh, we trust that our counterparts have done their due diligence, we're going to skim over and look at the cliff notes, if you will, and authorize this, CSP. It also benefits the industry because then they're able to bring their products to market, especially government space, more efficiently with less overhead. And it most certainly benefits
And,
the
and what does less
agencies.
overhead mean to the customer? Less cost.
Yeah, it's well, again, we
Ultimately,
just talked
right?
about religion, right? Like
Right?
imagine you having to go to two different churches versus just having to go to one church,
Yep.
right?
Spending
You
time in the morning in one church and spending the time in the afternoon in another.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
Um,
So
so, I mean, if you can say, look, my confession here at this church is good enough, it's the same God, right? At the end of the day.
right.
Uh, okay, I'm stretching it a little bit, but you
There
get
you
the idea.
go. But time is a resource that you can't get back, right? It's
Yeah,
the one resource that keeps going on no matter what happens. So,
yeah.
so
And the biggest beneficiary is actually the agencies themselves
yes,
because they can start using products quickly, right?
Right.
quickly and for less, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the whole idea here, right? They want to be able to do this for less,
Yeah.
um, because at the end of the day, we don't want to pay twice the amount of money for a specific a set of services. If you have to go through this twice, then you're going to have to start, adjusting your prices appropriately, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine if you have to manage two different environments, um, for the DoD and for the civil space. But it's also not just the build; it's the operations pieces. And as well as I do, the operation pieces is really what cost you, right? For the over the long haul. So,
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you think? The kind of industry is going, and where would you like to see it go to?
I think, you know, what's happening with FedRAMP 20X, it sounds like the wave of the future, right? This
Hmm.
continually being able to audit your system for compliance, right? Instead of a snapshot in time, that you do once a year with an auditor to prove that you're compliant. Well, what about the other 364 days of the year? Are you compliant? I mean, we don't know, right? So I think that's where that continuous ability to audit systems is going to be very important because these systems, they're on secure areas of our government. So we want to make sure that they are secure, right? And that's why I appreciate the thoroughness of these reviews we're going through because it's our government. It needs to be secure. We need to be able to prove it, right? There should be no questions around that. So I think that continual audit is a great way to more secure, the applications that our government uses. And I think that if they can also get more applications available to the government, then that will lower costs, right, and provide more competition for those applications as well. And I think that all is a benefit across the board.
And for me, what I'd like to see, from a vision standpoint, I've never thought the audits were horrible. I've always thought they were tough. And then yes, they ask some redundant questions depending on the auditor. Some are better than others, um, and it really has been the review process on the government side, which hasn't been as consistent or as fast as I'd like to have seen. That's why I really love this concept of the machine readable perspective. So if you can get a machine readable piece of it in there, maybe it can do 80%, 70%, 50% of the review, and it can still cut out a big chunk of time. If it can take out just any bit of that review process and just kind of move a little bit faster, I think that would enable customers, the CSPs, to be able to get out there and sell their services a lot faster. To me, that's a hurdle that we got to continually to figure out. I had an auditor on last week. It's not been published yet, but it'll be published soon, I think. And we were talking about like CDM and them wanting to know every vulnerability on every system in the federal government. And that's just, when you're looking at that much stuff, I, I just there's no way, there's no tools available, that can look at all that information. So when you're looking at that much, you're looking at nothing, right? Because it's just way too much to review. So somehow or another, we got to have some kind of hierarchy of review, and then some kind of hierarchy thing to flag it, to be an extra set of eyes put on that. And so I don't know exactly how that's going to come into play. I'm hoping that 20x and this automation pieces that we're putting into it, I'm hoping that really can lead to machine readable functions that will enable us to make faster decisions on things that we can't make faster decisions on. You know, Encryption on an EC2. Let me tell you, I know when it's on or when it's off, right? And in our systems that we develop, we have alarms and alerts that go off if somebody launches an EC2 that doesn't have encryption on. There's no way in our accounts that you can run a system that isn't encrypted, right? So building those features and functions into the designs will help the auditing pieces tremendously as well. So that's where we really need to get to, in my opinion, right? We've really got to get to that piece of it. But in some cases, I think it might even take some laws to be changed, right? Because in AO, the way they interpret the law, it may be that they have to look at every single vulnerability, and they might have to look at every single finding and everything all along the path. But if there's something that they could put in place to say, well, maybe that AO doesn't need to look at everything. They only need to look at the things that they really need to look at. And I think that's where where we've got to get to. And then they got to put trust in the automations. They got to put trust in the auditors, and they got to put trust in the CSPs. But that trust is earned right over time with consistent audits, consistent automations, um, that people then can um, look at the red, yellow, green, as an example, right? And then you don't really go look at it until it's yellow, as an example. Uh, I'm oversimplifying the problem. I know I am, but there's got to be something that we could do better. And to me, it has to start with automation, and maybe we even mix some AI in there as well as a supplemental tool. So how do you guys feel about that from an overall perspective, the automation perspective? Ryan, I don't know how close you have been, because I know you've been very much involved with SK and his team and getting their package all the way through. But I don't know how close you've been involved in the rest of our team that's working on 20X or not. But maybe both you guys could spend some time just thinking of musing about the automation perspective and what you think it could help us do, especially in this part, this auditing part, this review piece, and then going back to that, not doing this thing from a point in time perspective, but doing this continuously every
Right.
single day, you know?
Right. Well, yeah, correct, Gary. I've been, really focused on Riverbed, but I'd like to, keep up with what our company's doing through our blogs, and just, reading some of the messages that go back and forth around the 20X effort. I like the idea of these key security indicators, or KSIs, as FedRAMP's calling them, right? And being able to, with what we're building, able to look at those and say, this is what it's checking, right? And this is the result, right? So instead of having to prove that through screenshots in an audit, we can pull those records and in live time show that we meet these key security indicators, which cuts down on the number of checks that have to be done, because it's more or less, grouping them all together, right, and showing it all in one, that it's meeting these requirements. But I think with automation, I think you start to eliminate the risk of human error, right, and
Hmm.
something that's not checked, right. Oh,
Hmm.
I thought we checked that, but we didn't, right. We don't have a piece of evidence for it. So I think you start to remove that human error. So I think automation is the efficiency tool coming into this as well. I think that's important to cut down on the cost, right, and the resourcing needed for these efforts.
I agree 100%. I think I can't wait for the Department of Defense to start benefiting and start implementing some of this automation as well. Because, again, going back to the previous narrative, right, that if if there is uniformity, if there's homogeneity in the two sides of the government, doing the assessment, it becomes that much easier for the industry as well to comply and uh, provide assurances to the government, right? Uh, and who likes to go and get a bunch of screenshots, right?
Oh
Whoever said
gosh.
that, yeah, today is the perfect day for me to get a bunch of screenshots because that's what I live for. Nobody,
Hmm.
nobody thinks that.
Right.
No,
Right.
there's no um, fulfillment in
Right.
the in that, right? Um, Whereas, as you said, you're doing it automatically, right? You're pulling the KSIs, you're pushing them up to the government, and that way the government itself can say, "Oh yeah, these are the things that are missing, and we need to focus on those." I think AI can help, as you said, Gary, perhaps to the point that, or at least maybe today, right? SSP reviews, package reviews,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Maybe that, AI, maybe FedRAMP and DoD are already thinking about this, but and throwing an AI agent saying, "Hey, summarize this SSP and give us some of the highlight." That'd be a good way to say, where the gaps might exist. Um, in the same way, right? AI agent can be applied to the automation that's been ingested by the agency. But again, you still need that human oversight. You can't
You
trust
do.
AI just yet, right?
Hmm.
Especially when it comes to security, I don't think one can trust AI. You can use it as another tool in your tool set, right? As your Swiss Army knife, if you will. But it won't replace the screwdriver. It won't replace the hammer.
Not anytime soon, right?
Not anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
And to me, also with this is you have a history easier in an automation perspective as well, right? You have that history of met this control, so you can look at that over history, so you can see how the trend of how people are doing as well. And then you think about this from the we're and have been working on doing an SSP ingest. We can ingest SSPs with no problem today, but where we're not at yet is what is the quality of that SSP, right? Does that SSP meet all of the checks? Now we can do all the mechanical stuff. You can look and see check all the check boxes and all that, but to me that's low hanging fruit, right? But can it really interpret AC2A that says XYZ, and does it meet the spirit of the control, right? Yeah, we're still in the midst of trying to train some models to do that. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping that we have a hackathon sometime in December, and I'm hoping that rises to the top of one of the challenges that the teams take on, because they're going to choose which and what they're going to do at the hackathon. So, that should be
Well,
interesting to
I,
see what they
I can't
choose.
wait for an AI agent to write the SSP and another AI agent to review it and then
Yeah.
say,
Well, we've seen a lot of traction in the writing side, right? There are several companies out there that can help you write an SSP, and that's something that we can do as well. But I think that's only like 1/10 the problem, right?
right.
Writing an
and,
SSP is not as easy as reviewing an SSP.
yeah, and
So
I will say, I was being facetious, of course.
uh,
You don't want
no,
an
it's
AI
going to
agent
happen.
just writing up, a bunch of gobbledygook in something so important as an SSP, right?
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure somebody will do it just so that they can check the box, and they'll stumble through the authorization process. Maybe they'll get rejected and they'll have to rethink. But you know,
Well,
yeah,
one of the things that FedRAMP 20X is also doing is it's kind of removing the requirement for an SSP as well. Not that you can get rid of the narrative, you still have to have a narrative. Like the first section of the description of your service, right? That part won't ever go away, but the actual description of the how you're
controls.
meeting the requirements, they're not asking us for that right now. So what they're asking us for is
Interesting.
inside the
Okay.
KSIs to be able to
Mm,
explain how those KSIs are meeting the requirement. So,
mm,
as an example, in each one of our KSIs, we describe what we're doing, right? Make sure you encrypt all S3 buckets, right?
mhm,
And we say, well, the way we're going to do this is by checking these flags inside of AWS, as an example,
mhm.
right? And then we have to say, how do we know when we're done? So what are we doing, right? So in
Right.
order for us to say we're looking at everything, we got to describe not only what we're doing, but what's the criteria for success. So that's really what they're looking for. They're not looking for so much as how did you implement this thing, right? They're looking more of how do you know what you're doing is accurate and fully
It,
inclusive,
it,
right?
right. Right.
So,
That's certainly the right direction that they're going in. Then.
okay, cool. Yeah, I would like to really see that come to fruition. I think that's very going to be very helpful for us as well. So, but well, SK, I tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you and Ryan on here today. It's always great talking to you anyway. I always learn a good analogy when I talk to you. So this is a completely new one for me. So
One of these
yeah,
days, one of them's gonna come and bite me in the back. We'll
I've
see.
heard one or two of them. I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can go down that road. No, no, they're all pretty good. I appreciate them because I tell you, we always talk about storylines, and you got to be able to tell a story. You got to be able to pull that storyline all the way through. So,
Sure, sure,
but
sure.
yeah,
Hey, thanks for having me. Is this always love chatting with you guys about
well,
you know
good,
all
good.
kinds
I
of
do
good
have a few extra
information.
questions if you got time to ask my
Uh-oh,
answer
still
my
on the
last
hot
three
seat, huh?
questions. There
All
you
right,
go.
go ahead.
Hey, he's like, I thought I was going to get out of here, man. Let's go. Let's go. So I like to ask that. I'm going to ask both you guys this. So, if you think about it, what is your favorite book, of all time that you've read? I'll tell you mine real quick. Mine's The Stand. It's like one of my favorite books of all time. But pick any book that you want to
Okay,
pick, So, and then why is it your favorite book?
Ryan, you want to go next?
I mean, I would say favorite book. Obviously, book that maybe invokes the most memory for me is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Remember growing up,
Yeah.
How about you, SK?
Uh, I don't get to read as much as I'd like, and audiobooks just don't cut it for me. But some of the favorites are, you know, the Brave New World, The Animal Farm,
Mm,
1984.
I know where
Those
your head's at.
dystopian kind of, and then
We should talk more.
yeah, then Stranger in Strange Land is another, rather very interesting read uh,
Yeah,
that I enjoyed, just recently again.
cool,
So,
cool. I listen to probably one book to almost two books a week.
oh wow,
Um, yeah, I walk a lot. I walk probably about 20 miles a week, and when I walk, I listen.
okay,
And so 20 miles is a long time. You figure 3 miles an hour because I'm
hmm
slow. I'm not running, so it adds up pretty quickly. The amount of time, and I really look forward to kind of losing my mind a little bit as I walk, find myself in
sure,
another
sure,
space.
sure.
I listen to fiction and nonfiction when I walk. It's very very fun. So, how about your favorite TV show or movie?
Oh, anything that Ryan's in.
So, Ryan, which movies and TV shows were you in?
oh my gosh, no, I don't want
Listen,
to get into those.
yeah, you
Um,
got to now.
I mean, I'd so I started my career with a lot of the investigation discovery channel shows. Those were filmed locally, so those were easy for me to get into starting out. So I really enjoyed that. Um, I'm most known, especially in my town, being a military and a Navy town, for some training videos I did for the Navy, and those will probably be shown to the entire Navy many times a year for the next 20 years. Um, so that was fun to not tell my friends who are in the Navy. So when they experienced having to watch it, they really got pulled out of the training because they started laughing because they knew who I was,
Right.
right? And they're like, "Why are you laughing? This is a serious training." And they're like, "Well, I grew up with that guy. Like I know
Right.
him." But for me, my favorite movie is probably The Matrix.
Ah,
And then favorite TV show has changed over time, but I think it's The Office. I just it's
Mm,
just my go-to always.
that's why our sense of humor is aligned fairly well.
That's right.
Well, cool.
yeah.
So, last question I have is, we're very big on service here at Infusion Point. So, I always like to ask the question, what have you done in the past year, that has had a big impact on other people within, say, society or any organization. Could be anything.
Um, in my case, all the credit goes to my wife. She takes the initiative to help out a handful of families, and uh, I wouldn't call them in need, but certainly they don't have all the means, and so uh, helping fund their children's education or uh, address a chronic or an acute health situation is where um, she ends up helping out, right? Um, and she actually does it rather anonymously. So perhaps the recipient knows, but nobody else knows outside in our friend circle, family. Nobody does.
That's cool. That's cool.
So I,
We do
and I,
this.
I earned the blessings through her work.
We do the same thing. My wife is a big proponent here in town, and I follow her lead wherever she tells me I need to go. And then we have and you may know this, you may not, but we have a son that has Down syndrome, so we were very big into Special Olympics and anything to do with any of the group homes here in town as well. So, but
I remember you sharing that last December, I think, when we met.
okay, yeah, great kid. I say kid, he's 27 years old, young man.
And always gonna be kids to us. Like I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
be
a fact.
80, and my daughter's gonna be 55. She's still gonna be a kid to me.
Yeah, still my baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, for me, I'm able to support local charities and youth sports activities and foundations through charitable golf tournaments. I really enjoy doing that. It's a great way to kind of blend two passions, right? Of supporting the next generation for some of these youth sports organizations that I was a part of as a kid, right? And they supply college scholarships as you get down the
Oh, wow.
road, so
Hmm.
it really helps them, and it really they're built on shaping young kids into successful adults more than being focused on sports solely. It's more about growing that individual, and I really support that in my community.
Cool, cool. Well, guys, I appreciate you two being on here. I truly do. Thank you very much for your time today. And thank you, audience, for listening in all the way to the end. And as always, I may not always be the host behind the shield, but somebody will always be here trying to shepherd you through this process. Thank you very much, and peace out.
Take care.
See you guys.
Yeah.